So this will be my first exploration video at Tourne County Park in Boonton / Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. I've been going here for about 20 years, maybe even more. The last 10 years in particular, I've gone here a lot. Starting really in 2015. Probably made about 2,000 trips here, and there are some really nice walking trails here. You can also bike here. Just overall, historically, it's been a nice environment. You don't have a lot of shady characters. In fact, I'm probably the shadiest character here because I wear a hood a lot. But for the most part, the people here are great. Just as an FYI, they have had problems, and I've had problems in particular with dogs not on leashes. I'm not going to belabor the point. I don't want to sound like a angry, bitter person, but just be aware that there are dogs that are not on leashes, and you could have a dog charge you. So just be careful. It's probably not going to happen to you if you only go a few times a month, but I go almost every day. So just keep that in mind. Carry a big walking stick with you. And keep in mind there are bears, but a bear isn't going to bother you generally. They're not looking for a fight. So that's a long-winded way of saying this is a really nice place. It's not like part of a greater forest reserve, so if something would happen and you get lost, you'd eventually come to a neighborhood or a road. It's really relaxing. I've been going here for about 20 years, consistently for about the last 10. And so for the most part, I know all the trails. I know all the side trails. I know the woods between the trails. I know the walls that are in different parts of this park, because this area used to be essentially a place where it wasn't as grown up. There wasn't forest, there was more fields, and so old settlers would have their sheep grazing, and then they would have different stone walls to enclose their sheep. So you have like 200 or 300-year-old walls, and by that I mean the stones themselves aren't that old, but they were first built 250, 300 years ago, and then year after year, decade after decade, century after century, they were rebuilt and rebuilt. So the structures have been there for quite a long time. But one of the biggest attractions here, and if you go on mountainlakes.gov, they do advertise this, is the 100-year-old really large chimney that is located on a deer ridge which juts out into Rattlesnake Meadow. If you haven't been here before, Rattlesnake Meadow is essentially a large swampy area that goes through the center of the Boonton side of the Tourne, and it used to have rattlesnakes about 100 years ago, but they were eventually eradicated by settlers. But anyway, what would happen about 100 years ago, children that were the residents of this area would hang out during the summertime when they weren't going to school, and instead of doing what we kids do, look at our phones and whatnot, they would actually build things like cabins, and they would hang out in the forest, play different games, go fishing, hunting, that kind of thing. And they would build cabins, and they built cabins throughout Rattlesnake Meadow and throughout the surrounding forest. And one of those structures you can still see today, which is where we're going right now. So we just entered the White Ogden Trail from the Boonton entrance, and about a quarter mile down the trail, the White Trail from the Boonton entrance, is another trail on the left as you're traveling toward Birchwood Lake, and that trail goes through Rattlesnake Meadow, and you essentially go down that trail. You link up with the Blue Trail, which also travels along Rattlesnake Meadow, travel about 100 yards toward Birchwood Lake from the opposite side, and then on the right is the Chimney. So we've been traveling about a quarter mile down the White Trail, known as the Ogden Trail. The trail we want is this one right here, and we're coming up to. Please note though that it's generally not a good idea to attempt this in the summertime because it is incredibly overgrown and you will just be swarmed by mosquitoes and gnats. So if you do what I do actually though, and you wear a bug net hat, you can actually probably do it. I still feel kind of awkward narrating this, but I'm not used to doing this, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, as you can see, we've turned down and taken a left. This little path here is about, I don't know, 2/10 of a mile, I'd say. Possibly. And just to give a little more perspective, I don't think Rattlesnake Meadow here was quite as grown up 100 years ago, so they would just build cabins along here with chimneys. And there was apparently, according to mountainlakes.gov and the research they've done with people who used to live around here at that time, or they know people who lived around here at this time, apparently there was as many as 4 of them. But the only 2 structures still standing that these 4 structures could be would be the spring house, which is the kind of just a foundation, which is right around here too, but it's not that exciting. I wouldn't recommend it. And then there's the chimney, which is a 2-story chimney, which is actually quite impressive when you consider that like 17-year-old boys made it. I mean, when I was 17, I was just kind of playing basketball and video games. There have been people that have also searched throughout Rattlesnake Meadow to try and find other log cabins or evidence of them, but they haven't been able to find them. And I'm certainly not going to go through Rattlesnake Meadow. That being said, we've just completed the trail that goes through Rattlesnake Meadow, and then you're going to want to take a right here on the blue trail, not a left, but a right. And then you're going to travel on this trail for about 80 to 100 yards. And then the chimney will be directly on your right, about 60 yards off the trail, maybe 70. Now again, I generally wouldn't recommend doing this in the summer or even later in the spring. December, January, and February are the times where you want to, like, if you're going to want to see this structure, this is when you probably want to do it. It's early March now, so this is kind of borderline time because ticks are going to start coming out and bugs. But since we had a really terrible winter that was really cold, really snowy, you have a little more leeway to be able to do this. So I just want to film this, maybe film a couple other structures, and then when it gets more overgrown and more bugs start coming out, then I'll just stick to the trails, film those. Okay, now we traveled 100 yards. You can see about 60 yards directly off trail is the 100-year-old chimney. This is really cool. So I'm going to quick go off trail here for about 4 minutes, get this on film. Ugh. Also, just as an FYI, if you do this, if you go off trail, unless there's snow on the ground or it's like middle of the winter and like negative 20 degrees, always check yourself off for ticks. There aren't quite as many ticks around here as maybe other areas, but they are here. So this is the chimney. This was built by a few teenagers about 100 years ago. It was built in the 1920s, I believe, according to mountainlakes.gov from people they've interviewed. But they tore it down. Let me see if I can get a better shot without the sun in my face. So they tore it down in 1942, the structure that was associated with this chimney, because they figured, okay, there's no point in having an abandoned structure falling apart, probably not safe, but they kept the chimney, which it's just, I know I've said this many times, but the fact that this was made by like 17, 16, 18-year-old kids, and it's here 100 years later, this boggles my mind. Like, there are construction agencies that are building buildings right now that are making millions of dollars, billions in some cases, and there is no chance that the structures they're building will be around 100 years from now. This was built by amateurs, and it's still here. So, I don't know. I just feel we should remember that people of the past and the things they did. Sometimes they may not be around, but their work lives on for what it's worth. The deeds of these 16, 17-year-old boys are not forgotten. This is an impressive structure to last 100 years. And that's about it for this video anyway. This is my favorite part, really, of the whole Tourne. I love this chimney structure. I found it a little over a year ago, not this winter, but the winter before. It was a lot of fun. It's not that far off the path. It's pretty safe to go off trail here for just a few minutes to see it.